When Dad died, my brothers rushed to the will like hungry dogs and laughed loudly when they saw what he left me. I smelled gasoline before I even opened the rusty metal door. The familiar creak echoed like a vivid childhood memory. Dusty afternoons spent there, among oil filters and expired soda bottles. It was in this unglamorous setting that I said goodbye to my father for the last time. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 36 years old, the youngest of 3 siblings, and the only one who still spoke to Dad in recent years. That's not to say I was his favorite child, at least not in the eyes of others. But when he got sick, and the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, I was the one who stayed. Them? They were too busy dividing up money they didn't even know existed. When the family lawyer finally opened the will in his stuffy office in downtown Bakersfield, the air felt heavy. My siblings, Carter and Allison, could barely hide the gleam in their eyes. They were sure they would inherit a fortune. After all, Dad had been a tough businessman, the kind who built empires from nothing. But the truth was that, in recent years, Dad had sold almost everything. Almost. To my daughter Claire, I leave the gas station on 4th Street, along with everything in it, read the lawyer, while Carter laughed loudly and Allison blurted out, "You've got to be kidding." It seemed like a joke, a dirty, smelly, useless inheritance. But I didn't laugh. I knew Dad didn't do anything by accident. He was never one for sentimental gestures, but he was meticulous and calculating. That gas station was where he spent most of his days, even when he could have lived a peaceful retirement. It meant something. I just had no idea what yet. Over the next few days, while my siblings fought over papers and phantom bank accounts, I was back at the old gas station, broom in hand, hair tied back, jeans stained with oil. Some customers still remembered me. Others thought it was strange to see the owner's daughter there, cleaning bathrooms. But I needed to understand why that place had been left to me. On the 3rd morning, I found a letter hidden behind a can of grease in the workshop. It was from my father, handwritten, with the steady handwriting of someone who never bowed to time. "Claire, if you are reading this, it is because you believed that there was more here than dust. And you are right. Take care of the papers in the safe. Read everything carefully, and never sell anything before you understand what you have in your hands." My heart raced. Safe? Papers? Was that what he wanted me to find out? That night, for the first time in weeks, I dreamed of my father. He was sitting on the wooden bench next to the fuel pump, smiling as if he knew an ancient secret. When I woke up, I knew my life was about to change. I just didn't understand how much. If I close my eyes hard enough, I can still feel the warmth of my father's hands holding mine when I was little. Thick, calloused, always smelling of grease and smoke. He was never a man of many words, but there was a firmness in his touch that said, "I'm here." When I was a child, the gas station was my playground. While my brothers were at summer camp or private lessons, I spent my afternoons helping my dad organize his tools, watching cars go up on the hydraulic lifts, or getting soft drinks for truck drivers who stopped there to rest. He called me Little Cog. He said that no machine could work without even the smallest part. I didn't fully understand, but I liked the sound of it. His relationship with Carter and Allison was always tense. Dad thought they were arrogant, too impatient. They never cared about the job or the hard work of our business. When they went to college and moved to big cities, they only came back on special occasions, sometimes not even then. As for me, I never really left. I think I started to understand my dad better when I lost my mom. She died young, cancer, and he never fully recovered. He changed the way he smiled, the way he looked at the world. He became harder on the outside, more methodical. But with me, there was a kind of comfortable silence. We could go hours without saying a word, just working side by side at the shop, and still feel like we'd said everything. When I turned 17, I got my first professional screwdriver. It was the strangest birthday present I ever received, and one of the most important. He told me, "You don't have to be like them, Claire, but you need to know how to fix things with your own hands. That's something no one can ever take away from you." But of course, it wasn't always harmony. As I grew older, expectations grew too. And although I was proud of my closeness to my father, I felt pressure not to disappoint him. He wanted me to study, but he also wanted me to stay close. He encouraged me to learn, but always found a way to keep me tied to the gas station. My brothers teased me about it. "Are you a gas station attendant now?" Carter would say on the phone, laughing contemptuously. Claire, you're throwing your youth away in a place that stinks of diesel fuel, Allison would say, snorting when she found out I didn't want to go to her wedding because I couldn't leave my father alone that weekend. But I felt like I belonged there, not out of obligation, but because of something deeper. It was as if that cracked floor and those yellowed walls held more of my history than any other place. It was at that same gas station that I first heard my father cough up blood. He tried to hide it, of course. He said it was the flu, then bronchitis, then allergies. But I knew. And when the diagnosis came, lung cancer, advanced stage, he looked at me like he knew he wasn't going to make it. But instead of panic, I saw a strange calm in his eyes, as if he was already preparing something. You'll take care of things, right, little cog? I nodded, not quite understanding what he meant. Now, looking back, it all makes sense. The way he started locking up documents, the way he taught me how to handle the records at the station, the mysterious phone calls with a Mr. Barrow, whom I never met. He was building something, or protecting something. At the time, I just thought he was getting paranoid. My siblings didn't help at all during his treatment. Cold phone calls, quick visits, and even then, always with an air of, we don't have time for this. When Dad died, they showed up in expensive clothes, dry eyes, and in a hurry to get everything over with. But he left me the greatest gift. Only, as always, it was shrouded in layers of silence and secrecy. And there, back in my old job, with the letter in my hands and a safe I hadn't yet opened, I realized that my father's true legacy might never have been in numbers or property, but in a carefully hidden riddle, waiting for me to decipher it. The contempt didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly, between the lines of conversations, in jokes told with false lightness, in the looks exchanged when I entered the room. After the funeral, Carter and Allison organized a lunch just to take care of practical matters. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress and with puffy eyes. They, on the other hand, were impeccable. Designer clothes, expensive perfumes, and an urgency in their gestures, as if they wanted to turn the page as quickly as possible. Claire, we were thinking of selling everything that's left right away. Liquidate, divide, and move on, said Carter, already holding a folder of papers in his hand. Everything that's left? I asked, confused. I got the gas station, right? Allison laughed, as if she had heard a bad joke. Yes, of course. The glorious Whitmore gas station. Good luck with that, sister. Carter shook his head impatiently. The point is, this isn't about feelings. It's about numbers. We need the part of the inheritance that really matters. I swallowed hard. They didn't want to hear about my father's letter or what he had been doing in recent years. To them, anything that didn't have dollar signs attached to it was a waste of time. The following week, I received an email from Carter with an attachment, a spreadsheet. He had made an assessment of all the assets they could track down. He included me in the email as if I were a spectator. Not a word about what I got. Nothing about the gas station. I replied, just to remind you, the gas station was left exclusively to me. The rest is up to you guys to figure out. He replied minutes later, sure, keep your gas pump. Hope the smell of grease is worth it. That's when I realized they really did see me as less sophisticated, less ambitious, less of an heiress. Maybe they always had. I remembered a Christmas many years earlier. Dad gave me a set of mechanics wrenches while Carter got a Swiss watch. Allison got a trip to Paris. They laughed when I unwrapped my metal box. Claire got tools. How cute. Are you going to open a tire repair shop? I laughed along with them on the outside. On the inside, something tightened. Another time, at dinner, Allison was talking about a business conference in San Diego. I mentioned that the gas station was doing well that month and that I had managed to renegotiate with the diesel suppliers. She raised her glass and said, wow, congratulations. Soon you'll be the CEO of McDiesel. No one defended me. No one ever defended me. Even my mother, before she passed away, tried to mediate. She would say, your brothers are just different, honey. Don't take it personally. But being different should never mean being disposable. What I felt was a kind of invisible exclusion. I was part of the family, but in a functional way. I was there to solve problems, organize, take care of things, but not to be celebrated. My efforts were only noticed when they were useful. Deep down, I think I was always the link that no one wanted, but that kept everything going. And the most ironic thing was that Dad knew it. Maybe that's why he trusted me. Maybe he chose exactly what others would mock, the job, to hide what really mattered. as a kind of test, but it wasn't clear to me yet what he wanted me to find. At the station, I started searching every corner. In the workshop, I found a stack of envelopes with old documents, contracts, maintenance receipts, tax reports. Some were scribbled with words like confidential or review. Others had the name Barrow Investments highlighted in red. Who was Barrow? And why did that name sound familiar? In one of the folders, among oil-stained papers, was a deed to a piece of land, not the gas station, but something called Annex B, described as adjacent commercial area, non-operational since 1986. I had never heard of this annex, but there it was, in my father's name. The pieces were starting to fall into place. My brothers were fighting over bank accounts that might not even exist, but me, I was on the trail of something real, something buried, hidden, but breathing beneath the rubble of an old gas station. And if they knew, they would do anything to take it from me. Some people imagine that the greatest form of control is the kind that is shouted from the rooftops. But no, the cruelest kind is the kind that is whispered, the kind that hides behind cold smiles, contractual clauses, and we're just trying to help you, said with an air of superiority. That was exactly what I began to face. A few days after finding the documents about the mysterious Appendix B, I received an unexpected visit. A black car pulled up in front of the gas station, tinted windows, out-of-town license plates. A man in a suit got out and introduced himself as a lawyer representing my brothers. Yes, my brothers sued me. The argument was simple and ridiculous. Possible misinterpretation of the provisions of the will. They claimed that my father was not of sound mind when he left the gas station exclusively to me. They asked for a review, annulment, and a complete inventory. I stood there in silence for several seconds, staring at this well-dressed man trying to convince me that perhaps my father had been confused. My father, who had reviewed every clause of a simple water supply contract 3 times. Your brothers are concerned about what you may be discovering, he said, with the cruel calmness of someone who is just doing his job. That's when I understood. They knew. Maybe they didn't know exactly what Dad had hidden there, but they knew there was something, and they were determined to stop me before I got to the bottom of it. From that day on, everything became more difficult. I started receiving anonymous phone calls. Silence on the other end of the line. Passive-aggressive emails. Be careful not to get involved in something bigger than you can handle. Even longtime suppliers began to hesitate. One of them told me in a low voice that Carter had called offering more lucrative contracts if they stopped supplying the station until I left. An attempt to stifle my operations. The same gas station where I spent my childhood had become a battlefield. And as if that weren't enough, I was also falling apart inside. I couldn't sleep. I ate poorly. I even fainted one afternoon, alone, trying to push a pile of boxes in the workshop. The sound of my body hitting the floor echoed louder than any engine there. I was getting weak, not just physically, but emotionally, because the worst poison my brothers injected me with wasn't legal or financial. It was psychological. They made me doubt my ability, my right to be there. I called Allison one night in a fit of attempted reconciliation. She answered in a dry voice, "I just want to understand, why are you doing this to me?" There was a pause. "Because you don't know what you're dealing with, Claire. This position is worth more dead than alive. You won't be able to handle what our father hid. Not even he could." She hung up. Her words echoed in my head. Was Dad really involved in something bigger than I could comprehend? Or was it just a tactic to destabilize me? Even though I was afraid, I knew I couldn't back down. But I also realized the price I was paying. I was alone, without support, without friends who could really understand what was happening. I went to the bank to try to withdraw money from the company account. I found out that the account had been frozen due to irregularities in the court inventory. Another silent move by my brothers to corner me. I cried in the car, parked behind the gas station while I gripped the steering wheel tightly. It wasn't fair. I didn't want a fortune. I just wanted to understand what my father was trying to tell me. I just wanted to respect his choice. But it was as if the whole world was determined to tear me away from there. Little by little, I began to shut down. I avoided phone calls, avoided explanations. I told myself I had to be strong. But being strong every day is exhausting. And it was in that exhaustion that I realized I was on the verge of losing myself, losing who I was, who my father believed I could be. But part of me still resisted. The part he called gear. The smallest piece, yes, but the one that made everything work, and that gear was still turning, even in silence. I don't know exactly when I started talking to myself, but I remember the first time I noticed it. I was sitting on the cold floor of the workshop, my back against the oil-stained wall, a wrench in my hands. I whispered, "This is all crazy. I can't win." And then I laughed, a dry, sad laugh that sounded more like a choked sob. The days seemed endless. I slept poorly and woke up feeling worse. I dreamed about my father, but in my dreams he didn't say anything. He just looked at me with an urgent expression, as if he were trying to warn me about something but couldn't speak. I would wake up covered in sweat, my heart racing and with no answers. My brothers and sisters intensified the pressure. I received a letter from the court. They wanted to suspend my right to operate the gas station until a full inventory review. They claimed administrative suspicions and managerial incompetence. In other words, they wanted to paint me as crazy, isolated, unstable, incapable of taking care of something that, according to them, was a strategic family asset. I looked at myself in the mirror and almost believed it. My eyes were sunken. My hair, always hastily tied back, was now tangled. My nails were covered in grease, my hands shaking from so much coffee, so much fear. I could barely remember what day it was. I lived on instinct, trying to keep the gas station from closing its doors. But what really crushed me was the silence. The silence of having no one by my side. Of realizing that, apart from my dad, no one had ever treated me like someone who mattered. And now that he was gone, who was left? That week, a former gas station employee showed up. Miguel. "I heard you need some help," he said, already putting on his gloves. Miguel had worked with my father for almost 20 years. He had recently retired, but he had always been a loyal man. I felt a lump in my throat just seeing him. He didn't ask for details. He just started cleaning the pump windows, like he used to. "Your father told me that if one day everything went wrong, I should come here and stand by your side. I guess that day has come, right?" I couldn't answer. I just hugged Miguel and cried. I cried like a child. I cried for myself, for my father, for everything that was falling apart. He hugged me back, silently. It was the first gesture of true support I had felt in weeks. With his help, I started organizing the documents in the office. Miguel mentioned something that made me freeze. The safe in the back of the room? The one behind the tire rack? Mr. Whitmore had it reinforced shortly before he got sick. He said only you would know how to open it. My mind went back to the letter. Read everything carefully. And never sell anything before you understand what you have in your hands. That night, I grabbed the flashlight, dragged the rusty shelves aside, and stared at the gray safe encrusted in the wall. It was different, more robust, older. 3 combinations, manual lock. There was no key, only memory. I closed my eyes. I thought of important dates. My birth, the day my mother died, the first day I worked at the gas station. I tried combinations. I was wrong. Again. Wrong. But on the 6th try, I heard the click. Low. Almost symbolic. Inside were thick folders wrapped in sealed plastic. One of them was labeled Barrow Holdings Final Agreement. Attached was a floor plan of what looked like an industrial site, with red markings indicating underground structures. Underground? I started to shake. It wasn't just a gas station. It never was. Dad was hiding something. And now, for the first time, I had something concrete in my hands. But I also knew, if my brothers found out I had gotten this far, they would do anything to stop me from continuing. And for the first time, I felt real fear. Not of what they could do, but of what else my father had left for me to discover. The morning after I opened the safe, I woke up feeling different, not rested. That was no longer an option. But there was something in me, more awake, as if my soul had heard a silent call. The kind of call you don't understand, but you know you can't ignore. I put the coffee on and opened the folder marked Barrow Holdings Final Agreement again. I read every line with the patience of someone defusing a bomb. It was a land use agreement. Only the land in question was not above ground, but below the gas station. Specifically, it was a disused tunnel that connected to old underground distribution routes from World War II, when the region was home to strategic fuel depots. Dad had acquired the rights to that system. And, according to the final clauses, the royalties for the use or exploitation of the underground area would be for life and now inherited by me. That was it. That was what they were trying to hide. The land wasn't valuable for what you could see, but for what was buried there. There were millions there, literally. But before I could organize my thoughts, I was snapped out of my trance by a horn. Long, insistent. I left the document room and saw a tow truck parked in front of the station. On it was a sign, "Court order." An officer got out with a clipboard. Behind him, "Carter, you're trespassing on private property," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "This property is now under investigation," he replied, with that cynical smile he always wore when he wanted to appear generous. "Temporary decision. We just want to make sure no one destroys any evidence." He stared at me like a cat stares at a wounded bird. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. "You knew what Dad had down there." "I knew he was hiding something," he replied, moving closer. "But you weren't supposed to find it. Claire, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. This involves big people, companies, international contracts. What do you think you're going to do with these papers? Sue Barrow Holdings on your own? Sell disused tunnels on the black market?" I swallowed hard. Not because I believed him, but because I saw, behind that mocking tone, a shadow. Fear. He was afraid. Of me. "I'll give you some advice," he continued. "Get out of here, sign the waiver, sell this hole, and pretend you never knew anything." I closed my eyes for a second. My stomach churned. Everything spun. And then something inside me broke. A part of me that I had been holding back for weeks. No, years. The part that accepted the laughter, the condescending looks, the supporting role in my own life. I opened my eyes. "You're right, Carter. I don't know what I'm dealing with. But you don't know what I'm capable of either." He seemed to wilt a little, as if for a second he had seen my father in me. That night, I sat in the old office with the lights off. I stayed there for hours, in silence. Miguel showed up and left a sandwich next to me without saying a word. I didn't eat it. I just breathed. I breathed and made a choice. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to sell out. And above all, I wasn't going to let anyone else decide my worth anymore. I took the documents and scanned each page. I saved copies on external drives, hidden in 3 different places. I found an environmental lawyer known for taking on big corporations. I called him. I set up a meeting. The next day, I went to City Hall. I requested a digital copy of the historical land use records for the region. My brothers thought I was weak, but they forgot something essential. I was raised in that job. Where every screw counts, where every failure can be fatal, where the smallest mistake is costly. I knew how to work under pressure. And now, I was the one in control of the machinery. I used to think that strength was noise. Shouting, banging on the table, threatening. But that week I discovered that true strength lies in silence, in planning, in the "I'm coming" that doesn't need to be said, just felt. I started mapping everything out, the past, the present, what my brothers knew, and most importantly, what they didn't know. At the end of the folder my father left behind, there was a page with instructions scribbled in pencil, almost imperceptible. It read, "In case of conflict, refer to the coordinates in Clause 14. Legal protection activated. Code, EMI." Clause 14. I went back to the contract with Barrow Holdings. It was a clause reversing rights in the event of an external attempt at violation or undue judicial seizure. In other words, if anyone tried to steal it from me, Barrow Holdings' own terms provided for my protection, as long as I invoked it with evidence and records of the violation. My father had left a legal shield hidden among complex clauses. I wasn't just the heir to that place. I was its designated guardian. I spent the next few days like an obsessive investigator. I started organizing physical and digital folders with all the documents. With Miguel's help, we scanned years of files from the station, contracts, tickets, call recordings, even an old flash drive containing security camera footage from previous years. Among the videos, one in particular caught my eye. It was from 3 months before my father's death. It showed Carter at night, sneaking into the office. He rummages through files, takes photos, leaves in a hurry. Miguel beside me pressed his lips together. He already knew, ever since then. I used that video as a basis. I contacted the lawyer I had scheduled an appointment with. His name was Mason Dyer, specializing in environmental and real estate litigation. a straightforward man with sharp eyes and a voice that cut through the air like a razor. I showed him everything. For almost an hour, he didn't say a word. He just analyzed, read, went back. Cross-referenced data. When he was done, he looked at me with a discreet smile. You're sitting on a hidden asset valued at over 200 million, Claire. But I don't just want the money. I want to protect his legacy, I replied. You'll get both, but you need to be ready for war, I said, and for the first time, I believed it. Dyer moved the pieces with masterful precision. He filed a preventive action based on Clause 14, requesting immediate suspension of any measures taken by my brothers. He attached the video, the documents, the copies, and he laid the groundwork for something bigger, a formal complaint of attempted fraud and will tampering. Meanwhile, I returned to work every day. The pumps were back up and running with Miguel's help. Some old customers returned. I heard they're trying to bring you down, said a lady as she filled her tank. Don't let them. This place is part of the town's history. I smiled, grateful. But inside, I was still rebuilding. At night, I would take my father's old notebook and read his scribbles. Things like, trust is the most volatile asset, and those who understand their own screws will never be dismantled by others. It was his way of training me, even after he died. The following week, the injunction was lifted. The court recognized the validity of Clause 14. The injunction was overturned. The position was, legally, mine alone. Carter and Allison were notified. And now, the game was turning around, with the cards in my hand. But I knew. The final confrontation was yet to come. They weren't going to back down quietly, not with so much money at stake, not after underestimating me for so long. But now, I was no longer the Claire who cried behind the counter. Now I was the daughter Mr. Whitmore trained to be a cog and an engine. And I was ready to face the confrontation. They set the meeting as they always did, without consulting me. Let's meet at Mom's house on Saturday at 2 p.m. Be there, said the email signed by Carter, with Allison in copy. Dry. Impersonal. As if it were a business meeting, not the final confrontation in a family war. I could have ignored it. I could have sent my lawyer. But no, this was mine, and I needed to end it with the same strength that had sustained me this far. I arrived first. Our mother's house was the same as always. Slightly faded Persian rugs, the scent of lavender and waxed wood, the same picture frame with our old photo in the hallway. 3 smiling children. A lie in a frame. Carter arrived first, wearing a navy blue blazer and walking with a firm step, as if he owned the place. Allison arrived shortly after, wearing sunglasses and holding her cell phone, as if she had more important places to be. When they saw me, they didn't hide their discomfort. I'm surprised you came, Allison said, sitting down with a dramatic sigh. I knew you'd come, said Carter. You like the stage. You always have. I smiled, but the smile was cold, silent. Actually, Carter, you're the one who loves being the protagonist. I've always been backstage, until now. He rolled his eyes, but I didn't stop. You think I'm joking? That this story about the safe, the clause, the documents, will go away if you pressure me enough, that I'll get tired, that I'll sell out. I pointed to the folder I took out of my bag. I placed it calmly on the table. But inside here is the legal proof of attempted inheritance violation, the video of the break-in at the gas station, the communication with your lawyers, the attempts at commercial sabotage. Allison interrupted me, her voice suddenly higher. Claire, you're going too far. This is a family, not a company. Oh, so now it's family, I retorted, staring her in the eyes. When they were trying to force me out of the station, calling me incompetent, painting me as unstable. Was that family too? Silence. Carter leaned forward. Let's be practical. We know this land is valuable. We can negotiate. 30% each, you keep the position as a front, and we sell the underground rights to Barrow Holdings. He said it as if he were offering a prize. No, I replied. Claire, be reasonable, Allison retorted. You don't have the structure to run a business of this magnitude. Neither do you, I replied. The difference is that I'm the only one who took the trouble to understand what Dad left behind, to stand by him, to take care of things when you disappeared. And now it's too late. I stood up. I took a copy of the court order and left it on the table. The judge granted me exclusive possession based on Clause 14. Your rights to the underground property have been legally revoked, and there is an open investigation into attempted asset manipulation. Any attempt to contact suppliers or customers of the gas station will be considered commercial harassment. They stood motionless. For the first time, I saw Carter speechless. And Allison. She gripped the arm of her chair so tightly that her fingers turned white. You can try to appeal, of course. Lawyers are great at dragging things out. But in the meantime, I have already signed a contract with the city to have part of the underground structure integrated into a clean energy environmental project. Allison whispered, You already sold it? No, I replied. I invested in it. And with that, I secured twice the amount you thought you would get if you took me down. I grabbed my bag. I got ready to leave. But first, I looked at the two of them. You spent your lives trying to erase who I was, laughing at what I chose, but my father knew. He saw what you didn't see. And now, the legacy is mine, not because of luck, but because I fought for it. I crossed the hallway of the house as if leaving emotional captivity. Each step was a liberation. When I closed the door behind me, I felt a weight evaporate from my shoulders. And for the first time in this whole journey, I didn't cry. Because crying was no longer necessary. What was there now was something much more powerful. Peace. Today, when I arrive at the station, the birds are already singing. The sun is still stretching across the horizon, tinging the sky with shades of amber. The fuel pumps have been restored, and the old sign has been repainted, still with the name Whitmore Fuel, in honor of the man who, deep down, always knew what he was doing. Miguel is already in the yard, cleaning the windows like in the old days. Now he has a young apprentice by his side, a boy from the community we hired as part of a new local training program. The workshop has become a technical learning center. The old office, where I cried so many times, is now a small museum of the gas station's history and my father's legacy. But what few people know, what almost no one sees, is what happens below ground. With support from the city government and public-private investment, the underground galleries have begun to be mapped and repurposed for an ambitious renewable energy storage project. The idea came from a young engineer who saw potential in the abandoned tunnels and approached me with a bold proposal. We signed the contract 2 months ago. The estimated value of the project exceeds $200 million. But the real treasure isn't in the zeros on the bank statement. It's in the transformation, in the impact, in the power to take something old, forgotten, underestimated, and turn it into a silent revolution, just like I was. My brothers? After the failed lawsuit and the charges against them were dropped, they keep their distance. Every now and then I get lukewarm messages, attempts to reconnect, always vague, always self-serving. I respond politely, but never with nostalgia, because part of growing up was understanding that not everything needs to be rebuilt. Some bridges are only meant to be burned. All that remains of my father are memories, some good, some difficult. He wasn't perfect. He was tough, sometimes too closed off. But he gave me something no one else could, silent trust. He didn't spoil me. He didn't carry me around. But he left me the tools, literal and figurative, to build what I needed for myself. And that's worth more than any traditional inheritance. I still have his letter. It's framed and hanging on the wall of the new meeting room, next to a quote I wrote with my own hands. Don't underestimate what seems small. It's always the smallest cog that makes the world go round. Sometimes I meet young women at the station. Some come out of curiosity, others in search of advice. Many say they heard my story online, in a local news story that went viral. They look at me with eyes that expect some kind of wisdom, but all I have to offer is simple. You don't have to shout to prove your strength. Just don't be silent when they want you to be. Today, I sleep in peace. I sleep knowing that I didn't have to become cruel to win, that I didn't have to play other people's game to change the rules, that my journey, even though it was hard, twisted, and broken, is still mine, and that the old station which everyone mocked is now a symbol of something much greater: resilience, legacy, and the certainty that what seems small in the eyes of others can hold a whole world inside.